For more on this now, we are joined by SABC News International Editor Sophie Mokoena in studio to unpack this visit a bit more further. Sophie, thank you so much for your time this evening. Let's start off here. I mean, there's been so much anticipation for this meeting, which is now set to take place next week, Wednesday. What can we expect from these two leaders?
Well, I think the meeting is going to be very difficult. The reality is, you've seen the posture of President Donald Trump when he left for the Gulf region on Monday, when he announced that he's expecting the South African delegation next week. You could hear, he didn't even say, I'm going to meet my South African counterpart, President Cyril Ramaphosa. He just called the delegation, you know, officials, you know. That speaks to who President Trump is in terms of looking down upon Africa, because South Africa is an African country. Secondly, we know that he kept using this issue of Afrikaners as a key issue, genocide. And why genocide? Because South Africa has got a case at the ICJ where South Africa has made allegations that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza, and therefore he is throwing it back to South Africa, because we know America and Israel will continue to be allies. And therefore the difference is that South Africa is saying the international court must look at this issue. South Africa is using the international institution to determine whether Israel is committing a genocide in Gaza. And it is going to be a legal process. Now, Trump is using the word genocide and South Africa committing genocide without using legal interpretation. The spokesperson of the State Department yesterday in the US, she couldn't even answer when journalists were asking, why are you not using the legal route and international law before you can single out or label South Africa as a country that is committing a genocide? Well, we know there's no genocide in South Africa, not even a small example of a genocide being committed, because people who get killed during crime, it's all people who are in South Africa, irrespective of their color, creed, political persuasion, or including the religious involvement. It's all people who are in the country who are at most victims of crime.
And so, if we're staying with the tone of, how the U.S. President Donald Trump has categorized this upcoming meeting, maybe let's then talk about the possibilities, perhaps, of, the president of South Africa being embarrassed. And I mean, this follows his meeting with the Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky in the White House when he was embarrassed. What are the possibilities thereof?
Well, many people are saying this is what's going to happen. But the president is adamant that he will be able to handle the situation. He has all the reasons and the skills and the ammunition to do that. When South Africans were engaged in the CODESA talks, you had black Africans who were oppressed for many years, face to face with their oppressors. It was hostile. You would recall former President Mandela calling the then apartheid government President de Klerk, calling him out about the allegations de Klerk made during those talks. Mandela was done, and de Klerk was supposed to be the sweeper. And I think it was deliberate to have de Klerk speaking at the end so that he can say whatever he wanted to say. Madiba didn't even follow the protocol or the meeting program. He just stood up, went to the podium, called de Klerk to order. You would recall Ter Blanche with his people, the right wing, then stormed the World Trade Center and black Africans who were part of the negotiations had to take cover. When there was a march in Eastern Cape, you would recall at that time the president, the current president, was the secretary of NUM, and he had to take cover, you know, when they were being attacked.
Yeah.
So I think he's got perhaps the business acumen, as one person said in that insert, but secondly, he must have that emotional intelligence to deal with that situation. And I think he has been observing what is happening in the Oval Office, and by now I think he's ready. But I've spoken to many senior people, veterans, those who are in government and who are not in government anymore, diplomats. Some are really worried. They feel he was not supposed to go. But others are saying the time has come to face Donald Trump, but he must be a different leader. He shouldn't degenerate to perhaps a situation where this will be a blight on a nation, because if our president is ridiculed, embarrassed,
yeah,
and he doesn't manage that, but we know, then it will affect the credibility of the country. But I think he has to use his skills. He has been in this situation. He handled the talks where he was a mediator on many tough issues internationally, and
yeah,
I think he should have that you know, skills to handle that hostile environment. But I was told that Trump has requested that he must bring 2 golfers from South Africa, and you know who are the main international golfers. It's NELs and the old man, and I think
yeah,
maybe that speaks to, if you invite also the golfers, the situation might be different. But I think the president has studied the situation in the US. He's ready for hostile reception.
And Sophie, before I let you go, I mean, talking about that delegation, International Relations Minister in the presidency, Khumbudzo Ntshavheni, also forming part of that delegation. At the same time, John Steenhuisen from the DA as well. What does this mean now, seeing the addition of John Steenhuisen in this delegation?
It is about trade and investment. AGOA, it's, you know, there are challenges with the tariffs, and people who are going to be affected are farmers. They themselves are going to be affected, particularly those in the citrus industry. And therefore, the Minister of Agriculture will be talking about those issues. Secondly, he is part of the government of national unity from the other political party. And we know what DA stands for. And therefore, you are trying to demonstrate that, yes, we have issues, we argue, we fight, but this is who we are as South Africa. And I think that speaks also to the issue of the Afrikaner. We saw him at Nampo, where you have agricultural show, where you have real rich Afrikaners who own hectares and hectares of land, particularly in the Free State where I come from. Those guys own that province. And he was very firm to say there's no genocide in South Africa. But of course, there are challenges. There are those groups that are aggrieved.
Sophie, thank you so much for your time. That's SABC News International Editor Sophie Mokoena unpacking that upcoming visit to the US, and that will be done by President Cyril Ramaphosa alongside his delegation of 3 ministers.